So today we're taking a look at the Morimoto Elite HID Systems. This has been a staple in the TRS catalog for many years now, and there are so many great options in this kit, and while that's all well and good, sometimes when you're shopping for one of these kits, they can get a little bit confusing. So I'm TRS Matt. I'm going to go ahead and walk you through all these different options and what that may mean for you according to your preference, and hopefully that'll give you some direction. And after we get through this, we're going to actually wrap up and install this kit on a GMC Sierra truck, which is a super popular application. It makes a world of difference in terms of the light output over the stock halogen lights. So, first and foremost, the decision that you've got to make is 35 watt or 50 watt. That's going to be the XB 35 ballast versus the XB 55 ballast. Now, OEM standard, any car with OEM HIDs is 35 watt. This produces more than 3 times the amount of light output of a stock halogen headlight, so it's still a significant boost. It has a 5-year warranty, and it is super reliable. The 50 watt is, of course, for those of you who want to maximize that light output. Now, they do run a little bit hotter, so they're only warranted for 3 years, but they do produce more light. So again, if you want to max that out, go with the XB 55s. They do produce even more light. Now, these ballasts are the latest generation from Morimoto. They're very reliable. In the past, sometimes that's been a little bit questionable between the ballasts and the igniters, but that is no longer the case. These things have been beefed up both in terms of the ballast computer itself that runs the system and the separate igniters. This, of course, is the amp igniter, and it comes standard with the kit. It is separable, which makes troubleshooting easy, and if you ended up needing a replacement, if one should happen to fail, it is easy to do that because it replaces, it's a separate part, like I said. Moving on, the next thing that you're going to have to pick out is the Kelvin rating for the bulbs. All kits come standard with a few different options. You have 4500K, 5500K, and 6500K. Now, in some applications, you'll find a 3000K, which is a deep golden yellow color, which is great for fog and rain. But for most low beam and high beam applications, you're going to want to stick to that upper range. Now, 4500K represents, again, what you would find in any OEM application from the factory with stock HIDs. It's basically a warm white light and great for all weather conditions. 5500K is going to be a pure neutral white light with no off-white color like a 4500K, but no blue at all either like a 6500K will. Now, 6500K, of course, the highest one in the range, is still mostly white, but with a very slight tinge of blue to it. So for those of you who want to stand out and add a little bit more color to your light output, 6500K will be the best option for you. Now, do bear in mind that as you go up that Kelvin range, the amount of luminosity that those bulbs produce does reduce a little bit. We've got some separate reviews on that you can check out, find a little bit more information on that topic. And last but not least, you have to think about the wiring too. This is what's going to provide proper power to the ballast from your stock wiring, because the stock wiring is really not rated to power HID ballasts. It's really only rated to power halogen bulbs. A lot of people ask, can't I just plug the wiring directly into the ballast? In some cases, yes, you can, but a relay harness is by far the most reliable way to do it, and that's why the Elite kits come standard with the relay harness. Now, there's not too much to think about here because, like I said, that relay harness is standard, but the standard option from Morimoto is a really nice piece. It uses 2 independent relays, one for each side. So again, if in the rare case that something went wrong, you wouldn't be completely out of lights because you would still have that redundancy from the other relay that's still fully operational. Fully lined with TechFlex mesh, so a really nice piece, all molded connectors and the fuse taps, so good stuff there. Now, the one thing that you do got to consider though is the anti-flicker capacitor link. This is often a point of confusion for our customers that we'll be highlighting in this installation video that we do for you a little bit later. What this does is it actually absorbs any pulse width modulation, any pulsing current that comes from the factory headlight circuit before it gets into these relays and ultimately causes the HID system to flash. So the capacitor absorbs that current and smooths out the circuit into the relays so that everything runs nice and smooth and as it should. It's just a plug and play option, and it goes right in front of the relay harness, so it just goes right in line. For most of you who are running late model domestic vehicles, so anything from GM, Chevy, Ford, Dodge especially, you're probably going to need this thing whether you have a late model car or truck. So highly recommended. And if you don't end up needing it, it will not hurt to have it installed. So we do generally recommend that most people get this because it's inexpensive and it certainly doesn't hurt to have. The other option that you may see is what's called a standalone Canbus harness. Again, this is a product that has been more recently updated from Morimoto. It's a much more simple option than the relay harness, but it's really only for people with European applications, Volkswagens, BMWs, Mercedes, things like that. It uses the power directly from the factory wire harness with a combination of resistors and capacitors, and ultimately what it does is it eliminates a lamp out error code. So if you've got a error code on your dash when a light bulb goes out, that would be a good indication that you would need this instead of the relay harness. We don't recommend it if you don't need it, so again, only go with the standalone Canbus harness if you have lamp out errors on your dash when a bulb goes out. Again, comment on European vehicles. All right, so now that you're familiar with all of the different options in the Elite HID system, what we're gonna do next is install one of these kits on a 2015 GMC Sierra truck, which again is a really popular application for this kit. We'll show you a little bit before and after. We'll walk you through the installation, and from there, I think it'll be a done deal.
The first step to install the HID kit is to remove your air intake. From there, unclip your MAF sensor. You can then loosen the hose clamps. Now this truck has an aftermarket intake system, but they all come apart relatively the same. Just remove the hose clamp and lift the air box out. Working behind the passenger side headlight, the next step is to remove these two plastic clips to reveal the headlight bulb. This is a pretty common pry tool. You can pick it up at any local parts store. With the clips removed, you can fold the sheet down and you'll see your dust cover there. Grab on and turn it counterclockwise and you'll see your halogen headlight bulb. Reach in, turn it counterclockwise again to remove it and undo the connector. At this point, you need to drill a 7/8 to 1 inch hole in the back of the dust cover. Should look something like this when you're done. Now you can grab one of your HID bulbs and pass it through the hole you just drilled. If you pull this locking collar off, the wiring will fit through that hole you just drilled. And as long as you keep that hole between the 7/8 to 1 inch, the grommet should fit just fine. Now this plug goes to your OEM input. This is inside the headlight. It's what your headlight was plugged into from the factory. And this is your HID bulb. I would suggest cleaning this with the supplied rubbing alcohol and install it into the headlight. These connectors go to your HID ballast, and this connector powers the relay harness. Don't forget to install that locking collar you took off. At this point, you can plug your new HID wiring into the OEM plug wiring right here. After cleaning the bulb with rubbing alcohol, you can install it into the headlight. Give it a turn clockwise to lock it in place. Tuck the wiring in and then you can grab your dust cover and turn that clockwise as well. Now that the HID bulb is installed, you can grab your Morimoto relay harness. We have the battery connection here that goes to the negative terminal on the battery, and the positive goes to the positive connection on the battery. We're going to mount the relays and then connect them to our ballasts. The first step will be to make the battery connections. On these trucks, you can just remove this red cover here. Then you can access this black cover, remove that as well. You'll then see a few different studs you can connect to. There's a 14mm nut, you can remove that now. Connect your Morimoto harness to it, and then reattach the nut so it's nice and snug. You can go ahead and reinstall that black plastic cover, and then you can go ahead and install the red battery terminal cover. Now you can go ahead and install your negative wire. You can loosen the 10mm nut, place the negative connection on that, and reinstall that nut. Now we can connect our ballast and our bulbs. There's going to be a connector labeled OEM input. We can now install that cap link that we mentioned earlier on in the video. You can now plug that into the connector. At this point, you can install your capacitor link. Now, this is very important to install this connector to a very good ground. So if you're going to install it to the chassis, be sure to scrape the paint just a little bit to get a good connection. I'll do that now, loosen up the nut. This has already been installed, so we've already gone ahead and scraped the paint. As you can see here, this is a very clean ground. It's been cleared away and it won't give us any issues. Tighten that nut back down. The other end of the capacitor link is going to go to that same harness that we wired through the dust cover that is connected to our OEM input. Connect those wires now. At this point, you can install your Morimoto HID ballast. Connect these two plugs to the two plugs coming out of the dust cover. There's a shorter ballast connector on the HID wiring harness itself, labeled ballast. The shorter one plugs into this passenger side ballast. In just a moment, we're going to zip tie all this wiring up, but we have one wire remaining. This goes to the driver's side of the vehicle and plugs into the HID ballast over there. You can run it under this plastic panel inside here, tuck it up and inside, and it should come out over by that headlight. Now you might be tempted to zip tie this wiring harness up. I would wait until you get the airbox back in. It's a pretty tight fit, and the last thing you want to do is tidy it all up and have it be in the way of the airbox. With the ballast connector ran to the driver's side of the truck, you can connect it into the ballast, plug in the other two connectors as well. Now, thanks to that relay harness, we do not need this connector. So you can zip tie this up nicely along with the ballast once you've tested everything and make sure everything works properly. After testing everything to make sure it works, zip tie everything up, tidy it up, install that airbox you had removed in the beginning, and you should be on your way.
Now I know that plug and play LED headlight bulbs have become all the rage over the last couple of years, but if you ask me, good old HID is still the best of the best if you're looking for the most actual light output on the road and the best possible beam pattern. So there you have it, guys, the Morimoto Elite HID system, all of its options, a little demo on the install. You really can't beat it. So if you're looking for an HID setup for your car or truck, you gotta check this one out. It's the best of the best.